So last week I decided to take the week off and help out with a play that was going on, and the co-host that decided to fill in made a little bit of a rude comment about my lack of hair on the top of my head. Well, I guess karma really does exist because now his favorite hockey team decided to tank and not make the playoffs. We'll be getting into the Flyers' lack of playoff hockey this season, as well as the Phillies' decent success and the Sixers' start to the postseason here on this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. As always, I'm your host, Aidan Tiksinski. Wow, I am doing great today, guys. So I'm joined by a full panel this week, starting my immediate left with Shane Nolan. Shane, how are you?
I'm doing good, despite what you just said, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing good. So.
Yeah, we'll get into that. And we got Riley in the middle. Riley, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
It's good to finally see you again. You were off I was off last week when you came back, so it's good to finally see you. And then we got Braden at the end. Braden, how are you doing?
What's up? I'm doing good.
Yeah, so I do need to respond. I do like I'm a Flyers fan. I just need to rub on Shane a little bit for his comment last week, which if you haven't watched it yet, you could definitely tune in and watch the intro. But we'll get into the Flyers. Like I said, we're going to start off with the Philadelphia Phillies, who have been playing very, very well, won the last couple of series, or at least won the series over the Rockies. They split the series with the Pirates, had some good wins in that one, some bad losses, but the Rocky series is looking much better. Shane, how are you feeling about the series that they've won so far?
I mean, the series against the Rockies is a series they should win because it's the Colorado Rockies, one of the worst teams in baseball. But I mean, yeah, they're playing all right. I mean, the only thing that's keeping them above 500 is the starting pitching. I mean, the offense still isn't really going. I mean, I know in the second game against the Rockies they scored 5 runs, but you still need to get these guys being consistent with hitting the ball. But yeah, those 2 games against the Rockies, they looked pretty good, but offense needs to start getting it going.
Yeah, and 2 of the teams they'll be playing coming up is the White Sox and Reds, which, as I talked about before the show, the White Sox are the worst team in baseball by a very, very wide margin. They only have 2 wins right now. So, Riley, the Phillies are playing very well against a really bad Rockies team. They're going to be playing an even worse White Sox team, so there's reason to believe that the offense can finally get going in that series.
Yeah, definitely. And it's good to see what adjustments they could finally make to really set them for the remainder of the season, which they've been doing and been pretty good. We've seen some improvement already, so as long as they keep doing it, it should be good.
Yeah, we saw Bryce Harper get off to a really good game last night, had a home run, 3 RBIs. One guy that has just looked awful this season is Nick Castellanos. Look at his stats line, 169 batting average, 0 home runs, 5 RBIs. Nearly swung out a pitch that was about halfway to first base the other night against the Rockies. Shane, I know that I am ripping on Nick Castellanos. It's something I've done the last week off the show. I'm going to do it on the show. This guy needs to step it up a lot in order for the Phillies to have consistency offensively.
Yeah, no, he does. I mean, this is a problem that he had it started to come out in the championship series last year and throughout the whole entire playoffs back in 2022. He just didn't fix his swing of swinging on those outside pitches. I mean, last year he did. He had a good season last year. He seemed confident last year. I mean, we seen when the Braves won the division at Citizens Bank Park, he was standing out on the top of the dugout and was like, all right, we're going to get you back. And they did in the division series. And now you're not seeing that from him. You're not seeing the Castellanos when he was with the Cubs or the Reds. And that's what you want from him. He's not hitting the ball hard. He's not, I mean, like you said, he swung at a pitch that was almost at first base. So, yeah, he needs to start stepping it up.
Yeah, and the good thing for the Phillies, like Shane mentioned, is that the pitching has been really good. And it's one of the reasons why they're second in the National League East. When you look at the standings, they're just behind the Braves. The Mets, they got off to a slow start, but they're still 9-8 right now, so they're starting to catch up. The Nationals, who aren't projected to be very good, are 7-10, so we'll wait and see how things pan out with them. And the Marlins are just looking awful. So, Braden, when you look at the way that they've played, it's been very, very good for the Phillies to stay with that consistency, at least stay with the Braves for the first part of the 3 weeks that the Major League Baseball season has been going.
Yeah, like you said, we've done a very good job. I mean, only one game behind the Braves. I mean, I don't think it's bad at all. I don't think anyone should be upset about that. We're a 500 team. And for all our past series, we've won or tied them. I mean, we've been doing a good job. We've been winning most series. We just won the series against the Rockies. So I think, as you said, yeah, right now everything's trending up.
Yeah, and Shane, I know I wasn't here last week, so this is the first time we've really talked about the standings. I'm very surprised about the way the Marlins are playing. I know that they were still a wild card team last year, that there were some thoughts that they would compete for the division. And even though I didn't know if that was going to be for sure, the way that they're playing right now, I did not think they'd be one of the worst teams in baseball. And that gives some advantage to the Phillies, considering that the Marlins were the wild card team they faced last year.
Yeah, I mean, well, they lost Sandy Alcantara to injury. They got rid of Jorge Soler. They got rid of Jake Berger, I think it was, and they lost some key players in the offseason that they had that helped them get to the wild card last year in the playoffs. And also they lost their GM, who kind of got those players at the trade deadline for them to kind of make them better. And losing those key players is what's hurting them right now.
Yeah, and when you look at the starting pitching, and just the pitching overall, it's been very, very good for the Phillies. You've got a team ERA of 3.48, which is 7th best in Major League Baseball. Gregory Soto has been awesome with a 1.69 ERA and 1 save in the limited amount of innings that he's had, but hopefully he'll stay consistent in the back end of the bullpen. And Ranger Suarez was awesome. 1.73 ERA, had his first career shutout last night, 112 pitches, I believe it was. Whatever it was his career high. Riley, when you see the rotation, Wheeler's 0-3, but he's still pitching pretty well. Nola's looking much better. And now you got Suarez. That's 3 really good pitchers that the Phillies can rely on night in, night out.
Yeah, I really like how our pitching is doing. I feel like whatever the bullpen's doing, it looks good. Ranger Suarez, like you said, looks great. Even Aaron Nola, everyone had a little bit of negativity during spring training and then coming into the final, the actual season. But he has been improving slowly but surely. You can see it in the stats. He's definitely still has some improvement, but he'll get there.
Yeah, and Shane, if the starting rotation can stay this good, the offense finally gets going, I think this could be the World Series team that everyone thinks that they can be.
It can be as long as the offense gets going. But at the same time, when the offense gets going, the problem they have is then the pitching kind of deteriorates a little bit. And that's been a problem for the past 2 or so years is the pitching's good, the offense is bad. The offense is good, the pitching is bad. So they just need to have both of them going at the same time, going good at the same time. And then, yeah, they could win the World Series.
Yeah, we hope that the Phillies can finally get there. Like I said, they look like they can. Ranger Suarez looks really awesome. And I have to say, in the few of those highlights, those ground balls he took remind me so much of Cliff Lee in the 2009 World Series catching the pop-up against the Yankees. Just looks totally in control on the mound, which is something that you really want out of that third spot. So again, good to see for the Phillies. We're now going to go into a team that will be starting their postseason run in the Philadelphia 76ers. Their last 2 regular season games looked really, really good. They beat the Magic 125-113 and beat the Nets 107-86. Both of those teams are not very good in the East, but it was still good to see the Sixers get these wins this late in the season. And Riley, they're on an amazing win streak. They haven't lost since the end of March. They went all of April without a loss. It feels like that this could be a good run for the 76ers going into the postseason.
Mention that, just not these last 2 games, but they've been on a winning streak, and I feel like it's ever since Embiid came back, they kind of got that spark back into them. I'm excited to see them play the Heat tonight. I just don't know how far they'll get if they do beat them, which I do have hope that they could, especially with how they've been playing. They're going into this game tonight with that momentum, but it's good that they have that momentum. It's good that they've been playing how they've been playing, and I'm sure they can continue it somehow.
Yeah, so even in the Nets game, Embiid didn't really play at all. Maxey played limited minutes, obviously. The Sixers, it was pretty clear that they were going to be the 7th seed into the playoffs. But when you look at the way that the subs have played and these role players have played since Embiid came back, Brayden, I feel like this is a common thing that we talked about 2 weeks ago, but the fact that it's still continuing that way, that should give Sixers fans a lot of confidence going into the playoffs.
No, we should. As you said, against the Nets, without our best players, we still got the win, and our bench has looked fantastic. And that is ultimately also how you win, especially championships. Your bench has got to be good. You've got to have a solid bench, and I think that we do. And especially now, our starting 5 rotation is looking good. Bench guys now looking really good. Playoffs tonight, we'll see against a Miami team who's very good, but who are only really dependent on Jimmy Butler playing good or not, but we'll see.
Yeah, before we get into the playoffs, it is good to reflect on the way this season went. Obviously not the way that anyone thought it was going to go when it first started, with Embiid looking like an MVP till he got hurt. But even when you look at these stats that Embiid had, 39 games, he still averaged 34.7 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, 5.6 assists per game. Tyrese Maxey, 25.9 points per game, 6.2 assists. And Tobias Harris, who was still the third best player, even with like Kelly Oubre played for a lot of stretches, 17.2 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game. Riley, when you look at the way that Embiid played, he still scored more points than he played minutes, which has only been done like twice in NBA history. Even playing the 39 games, you can tell that the Sixers are just a completely different franchise and team with him on the court.
Yeah, and I feel like he's deserved that MVP title. He's shown it, even though he's, like you said, he has scored more points than minutes that he has played, which isn't something every MVP or like player everyone looks up to can do in the franchise. So seeing how he plays, not just this season, but seasons before, it just all proves a point that he is MVP. He is good.
Yeah, he is. I mean, he's good is one way to put it. I think that he might be one of the best players to ever step on a basketball court. But when you look at the way that Tobias Harris played, I think that this is a really important point. He still was the third best player, still scored more points than Kelly Oubre by about 2. But Braden, what's really interesting to me is that it feels like Kelly Oubre outplayed him a lot of this season, even though the stats don't really reflect that. And I think that just shows that what we wanted out of Tobias Harris, we're still never going to get.
No, yeah. I mean, like you said, I am also shocked because especially with Kelly Oubre, I feel like Kelly Oubre had a better season, at least as of recent, whatever. I am actually shocked, especially looking at this. Tobias Harris averaging 17 points is kind of crazy to me, especially the past couple of games, or these past couple of weeks, let's just say, especially without Embiid. You feel like, okay, this guy can step up more, when really he didn't. So in certain occasions he did, but it is kind of crazy. But yeah, it goes to show Tobias Harris will never be a third option.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that the Sixers gave him such a huge contract, because that just is going to always look really bad for them. It's going to look almost as bad as the Ben Simmons one, although we were still able to get away from Simmons. So maybe not as bad, but still, that was a lot of money that we paid for someone that is more of a role player than a great third option. We're now going to go to the standings. Obviously, we're going to be going into the playoffs, but when you look at the standings, so right now the Sixers are the 7th seed, the Heat at 8, Bulls 9, Hawks 10. I still cannot get over the way that this format is for the play-in. I just do not like it. I think that you should do reseeding. The 7 should play the 10, 8 should play 9. That's just my opinion. That's how sports have always been. The Sixers are the 7th. They'll be playing the Heat. If the Sixers win this one, they'll be playing the number 2 seed in the Knicks. Riley, to me, that's a great matchup, considering that Julius Randle will not be playing for the Knicks. I feel like that gives the Sixers advantage if they can pull this one out against the Heat.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I'm definitely glad that it wasn't the other way around and we would have been playing the Celtics, because that would have made me a little more nervous. But having the opportunity, if we do win, to play the Knicks could definitely let our team really show what they've been working for all season. They could finally show off. They got basically everyone's healthy, which is really good going into playoffs. So as long as they play as a team, I feel like they could prove some people wrong and eventually beat the Knicks and get higher than everyone thinks they might.
Yeah, and it is important to point out that if they do lose to the Heat and somehow win, whoever wins out of the Hawks or Bulls, which they should if they somehow lose to the Heat, they would have to play the Celtics. The Celtics are above everyone else, Braden. They're the only team with over 60 wins so far in the NBA. They're clearly the best team in basketball, at least in the regular season. The rest of the East is pretty even. So if the Sixers can beat the Knicks, if the Bucks win the series after that, I feel like the Sixers, I know we always say this, like, as long as they make it past the second round, but it does feel like that this is one of their best chances to make it past the second round in a really, really long time.
No, I 100% agree. I think we can beat the Heat tonight. It's still like not a walk in the park game, but it's not a very difficult game. I still think that with the Knicks, I'm not beyond worried. I'm not discounting the Knicks at all. They had a wonderful season, but as you said, Randall's out. It's really just depending on really Brunson as that main guy. And if we stop him, I mean, who's going to stop Embiid? We don't even have to get into all that. And then just go in and, I mean, it comes down if we had to play at the Celtics at the end. They're the juggernaut. They're going to be the team to beat. But besides them, we can most definitely beat everyone.
So I think it's really important to point out that we're not playing the Knicks starting out. We are playing the Heat, and the Sixers were 2-2 against them. And of course, this means we're playing our old friend Jimmy Butler. He used to be on the Heat. It seems like that the narrative that's been created, and it seems like that's the true narrative, is the reason he left, because he couldn't get along with Ben Simmons. Obviously, it would have been really nice to have Jimmy Butler at this point, but Riley, this is going to be a matchup that a lot of people are going to be looking at. And even though it does almost feel like a little bit of give me now that you have Embiid back, this isn't going to be an easy win any way you put it.
It's definitely one of the more anticipated games because usually when the Sixers did play the Heat, Butler was out. And then vice versa, Embiid was out, Butler was in. So honestly, since we have everyone in now, no one really knows what to expect. I'm hoping for the best, but still it's really like out there of who's going to come out on top and play basketball tonight.
Yeah, and Braden, if the Sixers do lose, your matchups either the Bulls or Hawks. Both of them have losing records. Both of them feel, again, like easy wins. But we saw this last night with the Warriors as a 10th seed. Most people thought that they were going to easily run through whoever they faced and got knocked out early on. The Sixers cannot overlook the Heat. I think that's something really important to point. And if they do, then this could be a really big defeat and demoralizing for whoever they face next.
No, yeah, I agree. As I said earlier, this is not a game to take lightly at all. The Heat is a very good team. And then let's just say we do lose. Okay, we're either playing the Hawks or the Bulls. Both teams are very beatable. It's just what comes with that is you then have to go play the juggernaut in the Celtics. So I say we worry about that if that bridge ever comes. I hope it doesn't, and I don't think it will, but yeah.
Again, we're going to try these predictions hopefully more than once, but at least one more time. Do the Sixers beat the Heat, yes or no?
Yes,
Yeah.
they will.
All right, well, we're all in agreement, so hopefully that doesn't come to bite us and that no karma hits us at all. Speaking of karma, Shane made a comment. Like I said, you can watch the intro. But anyway, the Flyers sort of fell apart at the end there. They needed to beat the Capitals to at least have a chance to get in. And a few other things need to happen. Unfortunately, the Red Wings were able to tie going overtime. So the Flyers losing 2-1. The Capitals really didn't mean anything at that point. So the Flyers finished sixth in the Metropolitan. It's their fourth consecutive season missing the playoffs. Shane, there was a lot that happened this season. But what do you think was the biggest reason why the Flyers did not make the playoffs this year?
It could be two reasons. The power play, if they had an average power play, they lost a lot of games because their power play was the worst power play in the league. And if they had an average one, they would probably be in the playoffs right now. And also that 8-game losing streak close to the end of the season. Getting blown out by the Blackhawks at home. You got blown out by the Blue Jackets. You lost twice to the Canadians, got blown out once by them. And that's the reason why. Also, some of the players didn't step up when they needed to. Guys like Konechny, guys like Farabee, Tippett, Frost. Those are the guys that you need to be able to hit the back of the net and those type of games where they were on that 8-game losing streak, especially against bad teams like the Blackhawks and Blue Jackets. And that just didn't happen. I remember in the Blue Jackets game, there was a 2-on-1, and Konechny got the pass for the one-timer, and he missed a wide-open net. That can't be happening when you're in a playoff race like that.
The other thing, too, that's come out with the Flyers, and this is a question that's been asked a lot to head coach John Tortorella, is about Carter Hart. There seems to be a lot of information that Hart, it was known to the Flyers organization that Hart could be away from the team due to the assault charges that we've talked about in past episodes. And it seems like that the Flyers and Tortorella said that this is something they knew could happen. That's why they decided to bring back Arisan. That's why they traded for Cal Peterson. At the end, it just doesn't feel like enough, Shane. And do you think that there's anything the Flyers could have done more in the offseason to prepare for not having Carter Hart?
No, I don't think they really could. I mean, who else there was really no one available to go out and get a backup. It's either you trade for a backup goalie, which they did, or you use Sandstrom, who hasn't really been that great when he's been up here. But, I mean, you can't just go in thinking that Carter Hart is going to be, automatically guilty. So they had to obviously have him come into the season in case he wasn't. And, losing him hurt the team. Erson had to play so many games because you just couldn't get the backup goalie, one of the backup goalies, to fill in for him when he needed rest.
And I think it is important to point out that this still is a rebuild going on for the Flyers. So it was good to see them finally have a winning season, one that they haven't had since 2020. But Shane, it just feels so disappointing because at one point they had a 75% chance to make the playoffs. They fell apart around the same time that every team fell apart except for what seemed like the Penguins, who still did not make the postseason, even though it got pretty close. Yeah. They still didn't, but it got pretty hairy at the end. I think that's the really unfortunate part, is that it seemed like that this was a team that could finally put it together and you could get someone in the offseason. And it still feels like you're not in the middle of the pack 'cause you're still a little bit above average, but it still feels like that you got a ways to go, and I think that's the unfortunate part.
Yeah, and the thing is, people are saying, oh, you can't be mad if they missed the playoffs or whatever because of the season they had. No, you can be mad because they were in a playoff spot since December. They were in third place in the division since January, and this is the reason why they have been mediocre for so many years is because either they're good enough just to make the playoffs, the last playoff spot, or they're not good enough, but they're not bad enough to get a top pick in the draft, and they're always picking 15th, 11th, 12th. This year, it looks like they're going to pick 12th in the draft, and you're not going to get any superstars out of that, at least the way the Flyers have been drafting for the past couple of years. So, no, I mean, I'm pissed off that they didn't make the playoffs this year because now, I mean, who are you going to get in this draft that's really going to help this team throughout the rebuild?
Yeah, at least if you made the playoffs and still lost in the first round, at least you would know you made the playoffs. So there'd be something to come out of this season. And right now it just feels like there really is nothing. I guess the good thing is that there is a few guys that played pretty well this year. Travis Konecny got 33 goals, 35 assists. Good to see him finally have a season like this. He hasn't had one for a while. Owen Tippett, who has played pretty well in different seasons, 28 goals, 25 assists. That's good. And Earson, even though he didn't play great at the end of the stretch, still had a winning record and still only allowed 2.82 goals per game. Shane, there's guys that play really well, but like you said, at the end of the day, they didn't do it down the stretch to get them in a playoff spot. And that's when you really need to show what type of hockey player you are.
Yeah, like these are good players, but they're not. I've said this plenty of times. I'm tired of hearing myself say it. They're not superstar players, and that's what you need for those type of games down the stretch in a playoff race. The Oilers have it. Penguins have it. Crosby almost carried the Penguins into a playoff spot. Capitals have it. Vegas has it. All these teams that are in the playoffs obviously have a superstar talent. The Flyers do not. And, I mean, Konecny with the offseason, are you going to sign him to a big contract? To me, I don't think you can sign him to a big contract. Yes, he scored 33 goals, but once again, he was a no-show through the stretch run and during the 8-game losing streak and missed the net a lot of times. So, I mean, maybe you can sign him to a couple years or so, but, I mean, that's their decision.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see what the Flyers do, and hopefully they can figure out something to do this offseason and get to the playoffs for what would be after 5 seasons. We're now going to go into Fast Five. So, Shane, we got to hear you talk about hockey a little bit. Let's hear you talk some baseball.
Well, every baseball fan knows a certain umpire named Angel Hernandez. Well, during the Astros and Rangers series last week, a Rangers player was up in the count 2-0, and 3 straight pitches was so far outside off the plate. And Angel Hernandez called all 3 of those, which should have been balls, and the player should have walked, strikes. Called them strikes. He is the worst umpire in the league. And no, they weren't considering, he tried to sue them because he tried to sue MLB because they tried firing him because of all the complaints he would get. And he sued them and all discrimination and stuff. No, you're a bad umpire. I guess you can't see where the pitch is going because you have such a big nose blocking your eyes. Just make the calls right. Even when he's a third base umpire or first base umpire, some of the check swings that he calls, we've seen it last year with Bryce Harper. He got mad at him. The Kyle Schwarber thing a couple years ago. Yeah, Angel Hernandez is just the worst umpire.
Yeah, I have really nothing to add to that other than the MLB needs to find a way to get rid of Angel Hernandez. We're now going to go to basketball. So last night the Warriors were knocked out by the Sacramento Kings. Braden, was this the knockout punch for their dynasty?
I think it was. I think we can give here a nice little applaud that the Warriors had a great run. They have no reason to complain. They had, several championships. Some awesome teams, we know, but it's done. I think last night especially proved that. The Splash Bros is done. Curry, he's still amazing, obviously, but his career is on the down. He's older now. Same with Clay. He didn't even get any points last night. It shows that this team is not. Well, they weren't a winning team anyway, but yeah, it's done. Unfortunately, it just is what it is, but we can clap.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because
it was good.
It was awesome to see what they did, and like I was saying, Braden, before the show, outside the Chris Mullin years, they really didn't have any histories. To see them win all these championships was great. I'm now going to go Riley with another basketball question. There's a lot of awards that'll be coming out. Who do you think will win NBA Comeback Player of the Year?
Comeback Player of the Year, I'm going to give to Steph Curry. Steph Curry ended his 21-22 season with 25 points per game. 2023, he ended with 29.4, and now the 24, he's ending it with 26.4 points per game, which isn't as good as last year, but it's definitely, for as old as he is and how many years he has had, and for the team being the Warriors and how they've been playing, it's good to have him as that piece still. So I'd give it to him, and then runner-up, DeRozan.
Yeah, both of those guys are really good. I will say for next year, there is a certain player for the 76ers where if he can play over 65 games, which I feel like he probably could, he could win it next year. And of course, I'm talking about Joel Embiid. He could win a bunch of other awards too, but it would be good to see him play those 65, be able to stay in nomination for a bunch of awards, and hopefully one of them could be Comeback Player of the Year. We're now going to go to Shane. So we mentioned the Flyers. They're obviously not in it. There's a bunch of really good hockey teams still left, though. Which one do you think is most likely to win the Stanley Cup?
To me, I mean, this probably isn't going to be everyone's pick, but I think it's going to be the Edmonton Oilers. I picked them a couple times in the past. I just think this year they finally have it all together. They have the scoring, they have the defense, and they have the goaltending. I mean, they got off to a slow start at the end of the year, fired their coach, went on a 14, 15-game win streak, whatever it was. I forget what it was. But yeah, everything's together for them, and that's been the problem in the past is just their defense and goaltending. But this year they have it all together, so I think it's going to be them.
Yeah, we've been waiting for a long time for the Oilers to finally win a championship with all these talented players, and obviously McDavid is one of the best players in hockey, so it would be good to see him get a win. Obviously, in the East, he's still got the Hurricanes and Rangers fighting it out for the top spot in the Metro, and any team really, because now you've got the Capitals in as a wild card, and they've got Ovechkin still, so a lot of really talented players, talented teams. Be interested to see how these playoffs shake up. The last thing we're going to talk about is the WNBA draft recap. Sorry about that. So obviously that was earlier this week. One of the most watched, if not the most watched WNBA draft in the history of the league. And when you look at all the players that are drafted, you got Caitlin Clark going to Indiana, which I think was a great move for them. You got the Sparks going for the California native, at least for college purposes, and Cameron Brink from Stanford. And then Chicago, I think, absolutely won this draft. You got Camila Cardoso from South Carolina and Angel Reese from LSU. Both of these players are absolutely great defensive players. They both need to step up a little bit offensively, but you can't teach the defense that they have. Angel Reese is one of the most athletic defenders I've ever seen. I think one of the best comparisons for NBA-wise would be Dennis Rodman. And Cardoso is 6'7", one of the biggest players we've seen come out of college basketball for the women's side. And I think Brittany Griner would be a great comparison for her. And we've seen both these players step up in clutch situations. Chicago really, really did well this draft. And we'll be very happy to see how the WNBA does this season. That wraps up this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Thank you so much for watching. As always, make sure to check out our social media at Twitter and Instagram at Sports Talk LTV. We only have a couple of episodes left this season, so make sure to keep checking us out as Shane and I, prepare our goodbyes. Thanks for watching. Make sure to tune in next week.